You know what, man? Some of the fondest memories I've ever had in my life were with my dad. I might get a little emotional right here because I lost my dad a few years ago.
Sorry to hear that.
Some of the best memories that I have were with my dad in Airbnbs. I wanted to have, and these were before, obviously before I picked these up, that feeling of being able to host people and have them have memories in these properties, that is extremely important to me. And most people that get into this business, they just want to make money. And granted, money's great and everything's fantastic. Who doesn't want to make money?
Sure.
But for me, it's outside of that. It's more of creating an experience, which you see in this property here, where families get together. They have these memories because that's what we have here in this lifetime.
All right. I'm excited to bring another amazing guest to you guys here for Defining Success with Matt Foster. I got Jesse Vasquez here. He was nice enough to host it in his one-of-one destination here in Modesto. It's traditionally called the Treehouse. Not cheap to stay at, but definitely worth it. Jesse, thank you so much for having us at the house and letting us do this podcast here.
Yeah, I'm excited that you're here, but I'm a little upset because you're supposed to bring me a beer, man.
Yeah, exactly. So I'll, full stop right here, guys. I had kind of been fishing a little bit with Jesse about what his favorite beer was, and he kind of left the conversation at there. I've been seeing him drink a lot of water lately, so I assumed maybe he wasn't drinking anymore. But I'll take the full accountability that I should have brought beers, being a terrible guest in his beautiful house here, and we'll continue on from here.
I forgive you.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
But you have to run to the store and grab a beer and bring it back to me.
Yeah, I got you, man. We can't leave here without something from Dust Bowl, Blakers, or something else that's good. Yeah.
I forgive you. I forgive you, bro.
Appreciate it, man.
No problem.
Yeah. So, guys, we're gonna start at where Jesse's at today. I'm gonna let him kind of introduce himself a little bit and talk about where this is scaled to today. And then we'll go from there and kind of dive into a lot of different good actionable tips that you guys can take for doing your Airbnb or your midterm rental stays, and then strategy that it's always changing, kind of where things are going. So Jesse, where are things at today, man?
Yeah. So right now we're rolling along with about 23 properties. A lot of them are in the Central Valley. We have property in Texas, Santa Maria, which is over by Pismo, Bay Area, and then obviously here in the Central Valley, Lodi, Modesto, Don Pedro, in those areas. So it's rolling pretty well. There's a lot of restrictions that are popping up all over the place. In fact, Modesto has restrictions. I don't know if you knew this or not.
Okay.
They don't actually allow, they allow Airbnbs, but they're putting a cap on 120.
Oh, wow.
So once there's 120 Airbnbs in Modesto, they're going to completely shut down. The city probably maybe 8 months ago, we all received cease and desist letters in the mail. So they basically were just like, you can't short-term rent anymore. Long story short, there's a council member that actually owns hotels here, and you might know who he is. It doesn't rhyme with Panny. But anyway, he owns hotels, and of course, if I owned hotels, I probably wouldn't want Airbnb in this market anyway.
Sure.
So I actually went down to the city council and basically said, hey, there's a conflict of interest here. And they actually allowed me to come in and help them write the rules and regulations for Modesto, which is crazy.
Yeah, and I think that's a testament to, when you guys get get served cease and desist and just think oh, that's the end all and start crying about it, right? You actually took action, and kind of goes to show that when you actually take initiative, you can actually be part of forging change, even if they ultimately are going to change it, maybe at least deter it or help it pivot to give you guys a fair chance.
Yeah, just so you know, I cried all the way to the city council.
Yeah.
So, we're going to put that in perspective.
Okay.
I cried all the way there, a handful of tears. But I recorded this, and if you guys get a chance to go check out my YouTube video, I actually literally recorded me walking in there. We had the camera, we set it down, they allowed me to go in and talk to them. And the city didn't know what the hell they were doing. They didn't know anything at all. In fact, even to this day, they still don't really understand the legality and the, how they're actually going to structure this stuff together. So I think a lot of cities and municipalities are dealing with this right now.
Okay.
So that's where the midterm option is really, really helpful for a lot of people, that if you do have regulations that are put in place, you can maneuver through them,
Sure. So just to kind of cap where you're at right now, 23 properties all over the state, one of them out of the state. How many properties are you hosting also?
Yeah, right now we have about 16 properties that we're hosting.
Okay.
So the hosting is really fantastic for people that bought property, a while back, and they have lower rates still.
Yeah.
Right now, if you buy a property, this, you're a realtor. The market is tough. 7% interest rate. On a $500,000 house, what is it?
It's hard. It's hard. it's hard to cash flow. Yeah, you're not looking at anything less than like 4,200 or so, right?
So that's where it becomes, you're going to have to manage these properties yourself. So I will actually tell owners like, hey, these numbers don't work for you. Like if you need to manage this yourself to make money. So it's becoming more difficult in our market right now with the rates being higher. There's additional options. That's what I talked about midterm rentals. I mean, there's properties that we're getting $7,000-8,000 a month on. Through insurance contracts. In fact, this house that we're in right now was going to be rented by an insurance company for $10,000 a month. Wow. My mortgage here is $3,800. So that would have been a pretty nice little.
Crazy margins and getting it locked in. And I think one thing that is super attractive to people is the cash flow opportunity, right? Especially in a higher interest rate market. One thing being beautiful is that I think it came out that 92% of homeowners in San Joaquin and Stanislaus County are at a 3% or lower.
Is it 90%?
92% are below a 4% rate, something like that. So it starts being, it's ripe with opportunity. But the thing is, I think that people think that is easier than it looks, right? There's a lot more work that goes in behind the scenes. It's definitely not passive. Like, whereas you have a long-term renter, maybe you are able to be a little bit more hands-off, especially with property management. Same reason you would get property management is if you have a property that you're realizing, hey, you know what, this would make a good opportunity for an Airbnb. This is something that Jesse sits down with a lot of homeowners all the time for, what the opportunity could be. So just to put a cap on this part of the podcast, 23 locations, you guys host 16 of them, ton to keep track of. But as far as systems and the back end, how many people are working under your hosting group or under your own personal brand to make sure that everything stays on track? And what are some of the CRMs and processes that you guys are doing to stay, to not pull all your hair out, right?
Well, I don't want to pull my hair out. I do want to dye my hair though, because it's kind of gray. But you know what? Gray hair's in right now, dude.
No, it looks good on you, man. It's like
guys,
a wave.
I need to dye my hair. Like, what's going on here? You want to get a Sharpie? We'll do this live on. I'm just kidding.
Nice.
I was gonna say you're gonna paint my hair with Sharpie. No, he's got one over there. But yeah, man. Right now we use a company called IGMS.
Okay.
And IGMS is basically like an appfolio.
Sure.
It allows us to see the entire calendar for a duration. We can plug and play who's staying for durations of time. It links with Airbnb, it links with VRBO, Booking.com, all the platforms all together. So one of the cool things about IGMS is that you're a property owner. Say some of the folks here are property owners. I can use that software to extract the data and give it to you. So like for tax purposes, for me giving payouts in there, you can actually go to the app and see what you're doing, what your property's earning for the month.
Okay.
So for me, it's like I'm check marking, not only being able to list on all these platforms, but also having that management portion where I can have the owner go through a third-party portal where they can actually see what's live and happening in real time. So for me, IGMS has been fantastic. Right now, we probably have about 12 employees that work with us. And those are including cleaners that we have that we hired on full time. And the cleaners will go in obviously with the Airbnbs and clean, or the midterm rentals that are 30 days plus, they'll come in and clean monthly on those properties. So as far as the operational aspects, we probably have about 4 to 5 people that are doing the operational stuff right now. And you're correct. Operating this business is not passive.
Sure.
It's the opposite of passive. And I think that a lot of times people will see folks with Airbnbs or midterm rentals and say like, I want to go do that. But there's so much work that goes involved, especially as you're starting off, especially as you're starting to kind of understand the market. It's not passive. Like, you got to put in work. You got to figure out what companies you're going to be out here. You got to figure out how to put contracts together if you're wanting to work with, like, say, Gala Winery or work with these insurance claims. And a lot of times passive investors that you typically would work with don't want to do that. They don't have the time for it.
No.
So that's where we come in and we can help and, put those things together. But I would say that if you're wanting to build a business, that's the way to do it, is you create an actual business. And the cool thing about this, Matthew, is that I have all these properties and I can eventually sell my property, and then the business that I'm actually creating by these contracts, the nursing companies, all that stuff, I can sell that too. So there are 2 points of business that are actually connected, but they're separated, if you get where I'm going with that. And I think that's where, right now with the way the economy is and the interest rates the way they are, we have to start thinking more on the business side. In fact, I was on Bigger Pockets and David Greene said something that I really, really liked. He said, real estate's been the same for like 150 years. In fact, it was too easy to buy real estate and make money from it. And he's like, now everything's changed. What worked in the past isn't necessarily going to work in the future. And I found that to be the most insightful thing out of the conversation that I had with him, because he was totally right. We've changed. There's new ways of doing things. Blackstone, you're familiar with Blackstone?
Yeah.
So they're huge, smart money, Wall Street money. They're actually shifting into the medium-term rental space. And if you look at those companies that are so successful, Blackstone's been around for a while, right? Smart money hires Princeton graduates, Harvard graduates. They see what the future is doing. Like literally, there's analysts that go and look at all this data. Blackstone raised that $30.4 billion, and guess what they're getting into?
The midterm rental space.
They're getting in the midterm rental space. They're getting into hospitality, because they see that the traditional assets aren't working.
Yep.
Commercial being one of them.
Yep.
They're letting that stuff go. They're selling it off, and they're getting into these other things. So if that doesn't give validity to where the space is going, like I don't know what else is.
It's kind of a stamp definitely on where the puck is going, right? They're seeing the cash flow, they're seeing the opportunity. Definitely not passive. Definitely more work kind of going into the future. I think I want to touch on one point here, which is the hospitality side of it, right? So if we really dig into any successful business, whether you're talking about a restaurant owner or someone who started a brand, there has to be some passion behind the work that you're doing, right? So
Totally.
I know that you have a background in the medical field, and then you saw the opportunity in helping traveling nurses and traveling medical professionals get into a space where they could, rent at a reasonable rate, where it still is a win for you and a win for them. But then there were some extra elements and some extra steps you took to make their stay more enjoyable. So that's why you've actually succeeded over time.
Right.
So what I want to actually pinpoint on, if you really were to kind of look back at young Jesse and kind of leading into where you're at today, when do you think some of the seeds of that hospitality and being a good host and being a little bit extra creative for what you do for people, where did that come from?
Yeah, first off, I think you called me old right there, and I'm going to go back and say that I'm still feel young.
Yeah.
I may be in my 40s, but I feel like I'm 22.
Yeah. No, so, you got the energy of a young man for sure.
I just want to make sure everybody understands that, all right? I'm not old.
Yeah.
At least I tell myself that. You know what, man? Some of the fondest memories I've ever had in my life were with my dad in Airbnbs, my family in Airbnbs.
Okay.
So for me, that, and I might get a little emotional right here, because I lost my dad a few years ago.
Sorry to hear that.
Some of the best memories that I have were with my dad in Airbnbs. So for me, I wanted to have, and these were before, obviously before I picked these up. So that feeling of being able to host people and have them have memories in these properties, that is extremely important to me. And most people that get into this business, they just want to make money. And granted, money is great and everything's fantastic, and who doesn't want to make money?
Sure.
But for me, it's outside of that. It's more of creating an experience, which you see in this property here, where families get together and they have these memories, because that's what we have here in this lifetime. So I think for me, it was really, how do I solve problems? How do we have people that come here and feel comfortable? And with AI, I don't know if I want to jump into this right now, but at some point, there's going to be technology out where, say, Matthew's going to be staying at my property, and this is something I geek out about, where I can go and type in some AI, and it will grab Matthew's favorite beer, unlike the beer he didn't get me, you guys. We'll go on Facebook, or I'll type in this AI, and it'll say Jesse Vasquez favorite beer, Dust Bowl, whatever it is, blah 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 blah. Before I show up, my favorite Beatles songs playing on the record player.
Yep.
My favorite beers in the fridge.
Yep.
That's what I want to have the same concept of when I have these properties. I want to be very specific to the guests that are coming. And I think that those kinds of things are what sets people apart. There's a book called Unreasonable Hospitality. It's actually about a restaurant owner in New York. And he did things that I feel were way above anybody else. He would have somebody that was eating at their restaurant, had reservations. They would ask what number they were parked in with their vehicle, where they were at. They would put a geolocation on the car, and somebody would actually go out and drop $1 or $2 into that spot when they're, if they were there for 2 hours or whatever. That's an experience.
Yeah.
People will pay for that because they're taking care of the client. They're making sure they're not getting a ticket, right? So we're doing all these different things. And I think that was, that's the concept that I wanted to have in this space is we're taking care of clinicians. What do they need? Blackout curtains. They're just working during the night. Do they need vehicles? We have a fleet of vehicles that the clinicians can actually rent from us while they're staying at our property. So if they pull up or they fly in from San Francisco, they get an Uber here. In the garage is a car waiting for them. Counter on the keys is a car. So it's that ease of being able to have a one-stop shop. I think that that's where you want to build a business. And again, my mindset was always thinking like that from the beginning.
Yeah.
So I had that, again, went back from my paying with my family in Airbnbs, being with my dad, and then just having that ability to know what's needed in solving problems. I think that's the most important piece of building any business.
That's amazing. And I can really see that because when I was kind of steadying in on you, it's a real testament to who you are as a person. And I think people are quick to complain about how something's bad, but not as many people talk about how something's good. So you got to work extra hard to create memories, and you really got to think about the experience that they're having and what's going on. We talk about it all the time in the real estate space that I don't want to be I don't want clients calling me. I want to be calling clients, right? I want to always be thinking about, hey, at this point in the escrow or wherever we're at in the transaction, I'm thinking like how they would feel, because they don't really care whether I have 14 escrows or one escrow. Right. All that they really care about is the one escrow that they're experiencing with me in real time, right? So I feel like you've kind of captured some of that same essence, which is like, hey, I'm going to think about your experience even more than you did. And then that way it creates this flywheel effect of where other Airbnb operators that are just trying to get up by on bare minimum, just trying to squeeze out the most cash that they can, have a hard, like, oh, I wonder why I'm having a hard time filling my space, right? Whereas you, goodwill, which is that invisible hand that Alex Hormozy talks about all the time, that goodwill that's in the marketplace, actually, and you've seen it happen time and time again, a lot of times you don't have a problem with being booked. It doesn't mean that you're not working for it, you're not making the calls to the insurance companies or the relocation specialists or continuing to improve those relationships, but because time and time again, you've delivered a great experience, all that goodwill, all that good feel out there, the relationships with the relocation specialists, it's created a business that supports you, and then you've continued to elevate from there. So just want to give kudos to you in real time, man, for what a lot of people don't see behind the scenes beyond the massive cash flow that the business pulls, is that you actually really care about people, and because of that, you're gonna win regardless, man.
I'll take the kudos, but that would have been a nice beer gesture right now that we could have cheers to.
Yeah. And so this is actually a perfect example, guys. If I actually could see the future of how this podcast was gonna go and getting burned on actually being a terrible host, I think myself is the example that we're talking against, that we gotta do a little bit better, and we gotta think a little bit harder about the future, right? So no, I'll take it all day long. So from here, I would take the next spot, which is a real life example, right? So you guys are sitting there looking at someone like Jesse, takes a property, is able to cash flow thousands of dollars a month, make a cool experience about it. You're like, hey, how can I do that, right? So I wanted to throw you an example. Call it Modesto, California, right? We're a metro about 300 to 400,000 people. You get a house, call it 10 minutes from the hospital. Say it's somewhere between, 2014, 2020 newer house, 3-bedroom, 3-bathroom. If a person was thinking today, like, hey, you know what? I'm going to be moving out of the area. I have a low interest rate. It makes sense for me to actually rent this out either to a long-term renter, midterm rental, or maybe even possibly Airbnb, but more likely midterm. Walk me through a basic, 3 to 5 step process that person's going to go through to make sure that not only is the midterm or Airbnb the right strategy for them, but also like how they would actually do it themselves.
Yeah. So I want to bring this up real quick. When I first started talking about Modesto with Airbnbs and midterm rentals, there was only 3 on Furnish Finder.
Oh, wow.
And that was 2 years ago. Guess how many there are today?
61.
231.
Wow.
So Modesto market has grown tremendously. I'm gonna give myself a beer, or kudos as we call it here on this podcast.
Yeah.
This is a great market. I think a lot of times the Central Valley was overlooked in a lot of ways. But for the healthcare system, we have a really bad healthcare system. In fact, I worked in healthcare, and a lot of the patients here have high acuity. They were really sick. Compared to the Bay Area, this area was worse, way worse. In fact, the congestive heart failure, the average age of somebody that has CHF in the Central Valley was 59. In the Bay Area, it was 72.
Wow.
So I don't know what's in the water here or whatnot, but it's pretty rough. So this has always been a really good market. Typically, you want to look at, what's the health like? Is there geriatric patients there? Baby boomers are aging right now, right? Mm-hmm. So those folks are going to need healthcare at some certain point. Is the job market growing? Is there big companies like Gallo, or is there new construction happening here for other people are coming? So those are the first things you want to look at. Second off, obviously, is the pricing of the property. So that's going to be really important. If somebody bought years ago, that's perfect because they have a lower interest rate. They probably have a pretty decent payment. So they're able to kind of restructure what that would look like. And typically I'm shooting for 2x long-term rental rates.
Okay.
And you can do that easily, like in the Central Valley,
Sure.
if you market the right way. And
Okay.
this is where it becomes difficult, where you actually have to reach out to these companies, create relationships, and then those folks will actually send you clients. We don't want to go on a Furnish Finder and find a clinician because they're frugal. They get tax-free money. Usually it's about $4,000 to $5,000 stipend. They don't want to use that for housing.
Mm-hmm.
So they're going to want to get a room, a 1-bedroom, for $1,500 to $2,000, which is like, that's pretty much what market rent is here. So if you're going that route, it's going to be difficult unless you bought a property 20 years ago and you're paid it off or whatnot. But nowadays, like what I do is actually I'll go after these agencies and I'll find folks that are coming in groups. And there's a lot of millennials now that are travel nurses that come in groups. And there's 2 or 3 clinicians that will come together. I got a 3-bedroom, 2-bath house, 4-bedroom. Those are the type of avatar that I'm going after.
Okay.
So it's more folks that are coming together. They're wanting to stay in one house. Or they'll say it was a traveling doctor and he's coming into the market with his family. So those are the types of clients that I want. Typically, we're able to 2x to 3x even long-term rental rates. And the caveat to this is that I have the agencies pay, not the nurse or not the doctor.
Got it. So you got someone that to stop you for 1 second. Someone that's not paying out of their own pocket, where it's like, hey, this is your lunch money. Oh man, let me see if I can keep half of it and still eat lunch. It's more along the lines of the insurance companies. They have to spend the money regardless, right? But it's just a little bit harder nut to crack, because you actually have to work your way up the chain and also build the relationship with the relocation specialist, that you're someone that they can actually rely on.
Right. Yeah, and that's exactly the point, is that you create these relationships. And the cool thing about the medium-term rental space, Matthew, is that I don't actually have to own these properties. You can have properties. Some of the folks here can own properties. If my place is booked and I get an insurance claim for $7,000, I'm going to call you up and say, hey, Matthew, what places do you have available?
Yeah.
And you're like, hey, I got a 3.2. Cool. What's the rent on it? And you're like, yeah, it's $3,500. Well, I got a $7,000 claim. Shoot me $3,000 or $2,000 or 20% of this, and I'll give you a client for 3 months. So now, not only am I helping the folks that lost their property, I'm helping the relocation specialist, and I'm helping you, who doesn't even necessarily have access to the clients that I do. Plus, you're making way more money than you would, traditionally. And say it's only 3 months, but you're making a really nice spread. You might not even make that for a year on your property.
So in the Airbnb and midterm space, community is a lot more important. It's not just, hey, this is mine. It's all private. You don't know what goes on behind the scenes. Actually having the relationship, you almost end up like a middleman, because the problem with creating great relationships with relocation specialists, there's only so many properties that you have that are open at any given time. Right. So if you're able to create, a win-win-win-win situation, even for yourself personally, community being a big part of that. So back to that person with the 3.2, decently new home. They're not wanting to slap it on Furnish Finder, right? You want them to kind of maybe make some of the phone calls to try to get to an insurance company, or maybe a construction company that's coming to the area, that's maybe doing some work. Maybe they notice some trucks that are staying at an extended travel lodge, right? Like really being more of a detective for who your avatar, who your client is, versus just a traveling nurse or medical professional. Because now with 200 plus on Furnish Finder, it's just a race to the bottom for your property.
Furnish Finder is a great place to get leads. So there's hundreds of people looking. In fact, if you look at, you can go to furnishfinder.com/stats and just type in Modesto or whatever city you're in, and it'll show you how many people are actually searching, how many people have sent messages to people. And the last that I looked in Modesto, over the last year, there's like 230,000 searches and like 100,000 messages that were sent. And there's 231 homes. So that there's a supply and demand issue. We see that, right? We see that. So there's still opportunity, but the cool thing about Furnish Finder is that it'll allow us to see every lead that comes in, somebody looking for a property, and they don't necessarily have to be looking for mine. They're called unmatched leads. So I can go on there, or I can have my team member go on there and start calling every single one of those people, finding out what agency they work with, what they're looking for. Have they found housing yet? When is their assignment starting? Who their agency is? Who their recruiter is? Who their relocation specialist? So we're now building a business off of that Rolodex on there. So you want to be listed on Furnish Finder. You want to be on Airbnb. You want to be on all these platforms, because again, you'll have somebody that can reach out to you, potentially help. But Furnish Finder is great because it gives you that resource. It's like your Rolodex, of your book of business. Sure. But you're getting these leads for you. They're not hot leads, they're cold leads. But that's at least an opportunity for you to build.
And if someone's willing to put in the work and actually make the phone calls and ask, sounds like maybe you got like a 5 to 10 every one of these leads you're calling, you're asking kind of similar lines of questioning. It's one of those things. It's a reap what you sow activity, right?
100%.
Like you have no idea when they say like, oh, I'm using ARM relocation services, and then that day you end up calling ARM and they're like, oh yeah, we're looking to put 5 more physicians in the Modesto area, and now you just kind of circumvent it. It's just basically the point is that Furnish Finder is useful, Airbnb is useful, but don't think that all the business stops there. There's always more that you can do, right?
Totally, 100%. Yeah. So I'll just give you an example. So like one of the first leads I ever got from Furnish Finder, unmatched lead, it was a clinician, and I called her, and she said she was at a house that was crappy, and she worked for AMN Healthcare. You brought that up, and she told me who her who her recruiter was. And I called that recruiter after we got off the phone, and I said, hey, I just got off the phone with this clinician, and guess what he did? He was like, oh yeah, I'm working with her. So now I essentially turned that cold lead into a warm lead by literally just dropping a name. That's an old school sales tactic right there for you folks, that, you take somebody's name, then you take that to the person that they're working with. It's almost like if I sent you an email and you didn't know who the hell I was, but I name dropped somebody else that we're with, or that or Daniel.
Sure,
See, I'm like, hey, Daniel gave me your information. The likelihood of you reading that and reaching out to me is probably going to happen.
Yeah.
But if I reached out to you cold, you probably would just be like, here's another Joe Schmo trying to sell me something.
Yeah, and just might get lost in the sauce, because anybody successful is busy, right? So there almost needs to be, our brain needs to feel like, oh, this is important to some degree. So that's an actionable tip for you guys. Like, don't miss that. If you have somebody that you're really trying to have contact with, find a way to have contact with people that are in the outer sphere, the outer circle, to make it easier. And then that way you're actually helping your interaction with the person in the middle of that target, right? Because actually by the time that you're speaking with them, maybe you have a little bit more useful information, so that way the conversation can go the way you both want it to go.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, again, it opens a door for conversation. Like on LinkedIn, I get messages every day. And if somebody doesn't say, hey, Matthew gave me your information, do you have a few minutes to talk? Maybe I'm not going to pay attention to it, but they did name drop you, so it's a conversation to have. So it's really important to make sure you drop those. Yeah. And it's not like you're calling that person out, right? Mm-hmm. I'm not using your name, maliciously or anything. Like, hey, Matthew gave me your information, because essentially that's what happened. The clinician gave me their recruiter's information. So I just said, hey, so-and-so gave me your information. Do you have a few minutes to chat? She's having a hard time finding property.
Yeah.
And that's what opened the door for me.
Yeah. And as successful people, we want to prioritize our time, right? So like, there's just a lot of input coming in every day from social media, from LinkedIn, from phone calls, from text. So after a while, like a busy person is going to have to find a way to prioritize what's coming in. So how are you finding a way to be a person that's prioritized, right? And I think Jesse here hit it right on the head. So from that point, I think we're making a good point about, do your due diligence, do your homework of your market, look at Furnish Finder, look at the stats, if you're trying to focus on traveling nurses or traveling medical professionals, look at the stats in the area. And then go above and beyond. Don't have just one avatar for your property, have multiple. That way you create multiple exit strategies for your property. That way you don't end up, facing the brick wall, basically, right? Yeah. From this point, so you've been in the space for a while now. You've built 23 properties. You're hosting multiple properties. You're starting to get on bigger pockets, and really raise a lot more awareness for the midterm rental space. Smart money's getting in. Where is the industry going in the next 3 to 5 years?
I think the industry is going in a direction that is going back to what we talked about earlier with David Greene.
Yeah.
I think that there's going to be way more investors that are going to have to start thinking about things like this, like a business. We see smart money coming into it. And I just had somebody reach out to me on Instagram a couple of days ago, and they're like, I heard your statement about smart money. Like, how is this going to leave any opportunity for me, a little guy? I think that's where we have the greatest advantage as being the little guys, is that big companies do things a certain way. Like if you have a business today, we can change on a dime. For big companies, if you work for a corporate company, it takes you got to go one person, it takes another person. And they're not able to be very specific, like we talked about. Remember I was like, your favorite beer, your favorite Beatles song is playing as you show up.
They're maybe not even as nimble.
Not at all. Yeah. And I think that's where you have the opportunity in this space they might be able to get a contract of 400, 500, 600 homes, but or units, but they're not able to turn on a dime. They're not able to adjust quickly. And I think the smart money, sometimes that's where they miss up on a lot of things. In fact, smart money bought a lot of real estate for Airbnbs in 2016, 2017, and sold a lot of them because they couldn't keep up with the structure of how those things were put together.
It's a little bit too much hands-on. Like if you're really creating experience, that's like trying to buy 600 restaurants and run all of them at max level, right? Good chance that that's
Right.
may or may not work out the way you want.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, and as more cities become regulated, as more states become regulated, I think the medium-term or mid-term rental space is going to continue to gain popularity. I think that right now, again, going back to the interest rates being high, we don't know what's going to happen in the future, right? But this is another alternative avenue as an exit strategy for people that are looking to make money. And I think that, again, these intuitive investors, if they're thinking ahead, just like you mentioned earlier, skate to where the puck is going, we see the writing on the wall. Like it's all there right now.
Yeah.
So it's up to us as investors to really start to think about that and start positioning ourselves and making moves and buying properties or connecting with people, building a Rolodex, being a part of a network, being part of a community. That's where you want to be. And like right now is like the perfect time to start really investing, because the next 3 to 5 years they're going to be big for the medium term space.
Yeah. So you guys definitely don't want to miss out. Jesse's spoken about before that Airbnb is in a different stage. You know, if we were going baseball terms, it's in the 7th or 8th inning. Midterm rentals, they're chalking the field. So this is a good time to start thinking about the strategy, start paying attention to people like Jesse, watching his YouTube videos. Jesse himself watched YouTube videos on a guy when he first started. What was his name?
Yeah, Richard Fertig. So that was one of the guys that I watched starting off, and he talked about Airbnbs a lot. He talked about smart money in a lot of ways. He talked about the adjustments of having properties. And back in the day, you guys, you can have an Airbnb with 4 walls, a TV, and kill.
Yeah.
And today, I can't do that same thing. Like you have to be way more thoughtful. You have to be more intuitive. You have to know who your clients are. You have to adjust to them. And I think this is a good thing, because too many people got involved in the Airbnb world or the short-term rental space just to make money, and it wasn't about the guests.
Yeah.
And now that things have changed, those folks are going away. And those people that are operating professionally, they're going to stay around. They're going to be around here for the next 5 years. And that's what we want, right? We want to build a business that has a long roadway for success. And I think that people that are creating and thinking about those things ahead of time are going to create a long roadway of success, especially in the medium term side.
Yeah.
Because we're starting, just like you said, and there's still a long way to go. So if you're able to get in on that now, think ahead now, start understanding the business model a little bit more, start adjusting, getting your first client, getting your feet wet, dipping your toe in, and really knowing the market, then that's going to help you grow in the future.
Easy money doesn't always stay easy, right?
Yeah. And this is the thing that I want everybody to realize is like, well, I think I said it earlier, what's worked in the past isn't necessarily going to work in the future. And I think if you're not rewriting the way you do things, if you're not consistently evolving, even as a person, you're not the same person you were a year ago, I'm assuming, right?
No.
Yeah, and I think that you have to look at your business structure, the way that we buy real estate, the way we sell real estate. A lot of that's changing, and we have to adapt and change and be nimble in a lot of ways. And I think that the smarter investors that are thinking ahead, that are progressive in those ways, they're going to win along. They're going to outlap everybody else.
And I think we're giving some really good nuggets here, guys, which is, if you come in with the mindset already that, hey, this is going to actually take more work than I think, it's not just easy money, but you still love it. You still have that thread inside you of, I think the book was Unreasonable Hospitality, right? Kind of doing the above and beyond for people to create experiences. You will get rewarded. And that's whether you're in the Airbnb and midterm rental space, or you're a real estate agent, or you're an architect or a plumber, or anything that you do that you actually care enough to bring your best to it. And we're still human beings helping human beings, right? That's where it's at. So this point of the conversation, I think I talked about where the industry is going to go in the next 3 to 5 years. For yourself personally, Jesse, with the hosting business, with your own business, where do you hope to see to grow for yourself in the next 3 years?
Yeah, well, if there's anybody out there that's listening that has some cash they want to throw over to me, I'll take it, because I want to pick up. My goal for the next 5 years is to pick up 20 plus units.
Okay.
And turn these into like little hubs for clinicians. So let's say it's a 20 unit apartment complex or even a hotel or motel. We turn that into a communal space where these clinicians can come in here and just mingle and talk and meet each other. We're talking about community, right?
Yeah.
And then start creating these hubs all over the U.S. So thankfully I have ties to like Furnish Finder and all these other companies now where I can essentially put something like that together, have Furnish Finder put it on their platform, list it everywhere, and have these hubs where these clinicians in the next 5, 10, 15 years, that's where they can go, stay at these hubs, and we'll have them all over the U.S. They're the same brand. They say they're the same kind of concept going into them. So my goal is to build those types of, 20 plus units catered specifically to agencies. And if we get contracts, even better, but making it more of a communal space for folks that are coming. If anybody talks to clinicians that are traveling, when they come to Modesto, they're like, they don't expect it to be Modesto, right? They're expecting it to be like San Francisco or somewhere cool.
Sure.
Not that Modesto's not cool. I think
it's perception of California.
yeah,
right?
exactly. Because most of these folks are coming from the Midwest. Like Barbara, the first clinician I met, she had this Midwestern accent. She was from Fargo, and she said, like, don't you know? And
Nice.
And yeah, she said, what was another thing she said? She said that people tell each other they love each other in those areas by saying, watch out for deer.
Nice.
That's how they told each other they love each other. Instead of
Right.
saying I love you, they say watch out for deer.
Yeah.
In that voice, though, by the way.
Yeah. Watch out for deer, man.
Watch out for deer now. Yeah, there you go. And that idea of talking to these clinicians, they don't know anybody here. So being able to have a communal space where these clinicians can come and not know each other, and this is what the idea of this property is. Like, obviously, we'd be cash flowing. We can get contracts with companies, and we can plant these all over the U.S. So that's my goal, going forward in the next 5 years is to, bring that vision to fruition.
I see the vision. For some reason, I see orange, but I don't know why I see the color
It's 'cause we're on
orange.
orange couch.
Yeah, exactly. Right. That might be that might
Well, the
be
orange
it.
beer you didn't
But
get.
the orange beer that he will be getting after this podcast, where I got to drag him down to downtown Modesto.
That's with you, man.
And yeah, so going from there, guys, I think that's really important. Is like the vision is always changing, right? If you're willing to come in with the right attitude, you can grow as far as you want. Jesse's hitting a certain range where his vision actually, could definitely be a reality, and he's actually pushing that forward. And the next 3 to 5 years will show, and there'll be different iterations of it, but the goal is still the same. Jesse still wants to help the traveling medical clients, whether they're nurses or doctors or anything in between, have a really great stay, and maybe even actually have some community with each other. I think sometimes traveling, unless it's with a group of your friends, if you are on your own, it kind of is a way to, it's the same like hostel concept, right? Like you get together and it creates an experience that would have never happened. You have someone from Fargo, you got someone from Omaha, you got someone from the East Coast, and just it's more fun in the mix, right?
Yeah,
so
totally.
I love the vision. I love where it's headed. I think we're gonna kind of end right here where I have a power 3 questions that I typically ask, all the guests that are in front of me.
Yeah.
So first one being, what is something that you're really studying right now that you're learning or getting into, whether it's a book or podcast or just a specific subject in general? What's something that you recommend, all the audience could look into that could change their lives?
Yeah, I think for me right now, I'm really trying to go back to my roots of like customer service. And we just talked about with Unreasonable Hospitality, really taking a look at my business. And I'm reading that book up because that's a book that I'm studying. I don't read a ton of books. I'm not one of those people that's like, I read 20 books a week or,
no mental masturbation for Jesse.
Yeah, none of that. Like I read a book and I really try to understand it and dissect it and kind of break it down. For me, that's like, that book, Unreasonable Hospitality, is really showing me how I can better myself. The whole point of it is that you give something that they weren't thinking they deserved or that they were even going to get in the first place. And that works for your own employees. That works for, if you're a realtor, if you work at Taco Bell, like it doesn't matter, So I think for me, it's like really studying that part of the business. And I really do love business at the end of the day. Like I truly do.
Yeah.
I think it's really learning more about business at the end of the day. I think
you love the game.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, yeah, it's fun, man. And I think part of my brain, which is why I think I've been able to be this successful, is that I think about it like a game. Like I truly do. Literally like a game.
It objectifies it, the players, everything that you do. So that's the actionable tip right there, guys, is Unreasonable Hospitality. That's the book that he's recommending. And then also kind of a frame of mind around how you play the game. This is life. We get one shot at it, right? But it can be fun. Like we love games as humans. Why can't business be a game? And if you have that, then the losses and the punches in the mouth and all the crazy stuff that happens, it just feels a little bit less worse when it's a game versus if it's just like the dauntingness of life in general. So Unreasonable Hospitality, guys, life is a game. Number 2, that we always ask the guests that are in front of us, because you are obviously successful, you've pushed forward through things. What is something that the audience could take away today that if they actually applied to their lives and stayed consistent with it would help change their lives?
Yeah, the first thing that comes to my mind is being alive. Like to be a human, you literally have to defy odds. It's 1 in 700 trillion is the, like we're lucky. we hit the lottery already just by being human.
Yeah.
So I think that a lot of times we think about like failures and, you know, we grew up in bad households or families, but if you really start to think about it, like we're really lucky to be here as people and be human, because just that we could have been like a shoe or some shit, right? I don't know if I'm allowed to cuss here.
Yeah,
I could have been a coaster.
you go for it.
You know, I could have been this cup of water right here. So like, I mean, we're human. We get to live on this earth and do things that we want to do, and literally we could do anything we want. I could tell my kids that all the time, like, whatever you guys want to do, you truly can. You just have to think it and believe it first.
Yeah. And you're setting the example for them. Kids believe what they see, not always what they hear, and you're definitely showing them. So that's the nugget takeaway right there, guys, is be grateful for being alive. I think taking a second sometimes to take stock where you're at in life. And even if you're in the worst of worst situations, there's always the silver linings. There's always, you know, someone who cut off their left arm to be in the same spot that you guys would. So be grateful for being alive. The last thing that we ask on the podcast, and I don't think it's typically asked on any other podcast, I'm trying to do something different here, is I believe, just like you're saying about human beings, that we're all 1 degree away from each other. So just like name dropping when you're trying to talk to a recruiter and everything else to help prioritize who you are in the conversation, one thing I like to do with the guests that are in front of me is that, you know, successful people run together. So my ask is, who's the next person that you recommend personally and be happy to make the introduction to that I have on the podcast?
Did you already have Daniel on?
So Daniel is going to be the
season finale.
Season finale, okay. Yeah, Daniel and Aaron, those are like my 2 mentors that I have here, and you're lucky enough to work with one of those guys.
Yeah, I get to see Daniel every day, and I'm grateful for that.
Yeah, and I think he's really good. My buddy Rafa he has like 70 units. He's up in Orange County. Are you talking about only local?
No, this could be, and this could be even over Zoom. So whoever top person that you recommend, that you think of, that would be a good person to have on the podcast, I'd be happy to talk to him.
Yeah, I think he would be really good. He was built, you know, he grew up in a lower income house and has built, you know, a really successful, you know, $60,000-$70,000 a month, you know, just off of properties he doesn't own.
Just off of
arbitrage.
Just off of relationships and hustle.
Yeah, exactly. And he's built this really amazing business, and he's buying hotels and stuff. So
wow. Yeah,
and again, he didn't come from money. He didn't come from anything, you know, other than his family that he has and the core values. He's a Hispanic guy, so he has that Hispanic culture in him, you know, like that family culture. But he's somebody you definitely want to connect with.
Definitely. All right, Rafa, you heard it here. We're coming for you. We'll get you on here.
Definitely, man.
Good stuff. Well, Jesse, again, you know, I know, again, I'll publicly say this. I dropped the ball on the beer. I didn't drop the ball in a lot of other ways, but I did drop the ball on the beer. I appreciate the forgiveness. I'm grateful to be alive. I'm looking forward to rereading Unreasonable Hospitality. Jesse, you're a wealth of knowledge. You're super successful, but you're also super humble. I like the way that you're real with people. I've seen you interact in a lot of different circles, and he's the same guy, whether you're here at the podcast or talking to people above you, or, you know, not that anybody's below you, but just different stages of their journey, man. So I really appreciate you as a human being.
Yeah.
Appreciate having you on, and look forward to most likely having you on the podcast again. It feels like one of those.
Yeah, sounds good, man.
Thanks,
I appreciate it. Appreciate it, man. Take care.